Well, I'm going to be the one talking for this presentation. So I think for you, most of you guys, it's the afternoon. So I'm going to say good afternoon, everyone.
Semaine,
Uh,
Inch'Allah, je
I
rentre
oh,
dimanche.
I can hear some people talking. If you could turn off the microphone, please. Thank you. So it's such an honor to be here with you today and to be presenting our talk entitled Interviewing Vulnerable Populations, Challenges for Social Intervention Assessments and Lessons Learned. My name is Milaine Alarie, and I am here today with my colleague Isabelle Beaudoin. We are both working at the INESSS, l'Institut National d'Excellence en Santé et Services Sociaux, and we work in the Social Services and Mental Health Division at the INESSS. Okay. So in today's presentation, we will talk about some of the challenges that we faced in our efforts to include marginalized voices in our projects, and we will discuss some of the useful strategies we've put in place to overcome them. We will cover five main themes, namely the recruitment of participants, the accessibility of participation methods, the issues related to the sensitive nature of certain topics and confidentiality, safety issues, and the importance of gratitude. We will use 5 of our recent projects as examples throughout this presentation. And we will keep the last 15 minutes of this meeting for a quick Q&A. Before going any further, we just want to inform you that today we will quickly cover some sensitive topics, namely intimate partner violence, IPV, child neglect, and sexual abuse, just so you know. In our division, our projects often focus on social services dedicated to vulnerable groups. Here is a brief description of the 5 projects that we will use as examples today. The first one is called Best Group Interventions for Perpetrator of Intimate Partner Violence, so IPV. In Quebec, like in most parts of the world, IPV is an important social issue. At the request of the Health and Social Services Minister, we carried out a social intervention assessment to answer the following question: which effective group interventions for IPV perpetrators should be used in Quebec? We conducted consultations with staff working in community organizations that provide IPV intervention programs, with former participants in such programs, and with victims of IPV. The second project is called Perinatal Pathway, Supporting Women with Physical Disabilities or Intellectual Disabilities or Autism. Women with disabilities or autism encounter various obstacles during their perinatal journey. They sometimes have to interact with service providers whose knowledge and experience of their situation may be limited. For this project, we sought to develop a support tool dedicated to healthcare professionals and designed to improve disabled and autistic women's care experiences throughout their perinatal journey. As part of our data collection process, we conducted interviews with disabled or autistic mothers to find out about their experiences during their perinatal journey within the healthcare system. The third project is called Opioid Overdose and Resuscitation. The opioid crisis is a major public health issue worldwide. In Quebec, we've witnessed a significant increase in opioid use and opioid-related deaths. We were asked to review the Quebec resuscitation protocol in order to determine the best clinical and organizational strategies for resuscitation and the administration of naloxone in cases of opioid overdose in the community, and to propose strategies to improve the applicability and acceptability of these recommended practices. For this project, we conducted individual interviews with people who had overdosed once and other people who had witnessed and intervened during an overdose. The fourth project is Services for At-Risk or Neglected Children and Their Families. For this project, we were asked to make recommendations on the service trajectory benchmarks for at-risk or neglected children and their family. As part of our social service assessment process, we conducted 2 focus groups with parents of children who had been monitored by Child Protection Services, CPS, due to neglect. And the last project is called Rehabilitation Services for Young People with Adjustment Problems. For this project, we sought to identify best practices regarding rehab services offered to young people with adjustment problems living in state-controlled rehab centers. As part of the data collection process, we conducted a focus group with young people living in such facilities. I also want to take a second to acknowledge the work of some of our colleagues who are not here today, but who contributed to the success of one or many of these projects. First, let's talk about the recruitment of participants. It is important to remember that many people within marginalized groups do not automatically trust researchers or government representatives. With the choice of words used or the way that the project is described in recruitment material must be carefully considered to minimize any unintentional intellectual elitism. Using simple, common language can be useful to diffuse any mistrust that prospective participants may have. It is often difficult to reach vulnerable populations and inform them about our ongoing projects in order to recruit participants. We have found that that the communication channels commonly used in our organization, such as our newsletter or our social media like LinkedIn or Facebook, they're not always optimal, as few people in the targeted vulnerable groups use these communication channels. In some projects, it proved helpful to partner with community organizations working with the target population to help us publicize our recruitment poster. In the project on interventions for IPD perpetrators, community organizations offering this type of intervention were involved in our project from beginning to end. Therefore, when it came time to recruit individuals who had participated in those types of intervention programs, these community organizations readily agreed to share our recruitment poster, which greatly facilitated the recruitment process. That said, we found that this type of collaboration is easier to achieve when community organizations already know us well and when a good rapport has been previously established. Without this prior relationship of trust, few community organizations are interested in supporting us in our recruitment efforts. For instance, we had few connections with organizations providing services to victims of IPV before we started this project, nor with organizations offering services to women in vulnerable situations. Consequently, despite our numerous emails and calls, our efforts to encourage these organizations to support us in our participation recruitment efforts have yielded little success. So based on that experience, it seems very pertinent for us to reinforce our ties with community partners in the future. This reflection is ongoing. We're still trying to identify new strategies we could use to reach vulnerable groups when seeking consultation participants. When prospective participants do hear about our project and express interest in participating, it's important to concisely explain what participation entails. This is particularly important when the people we are trying to reach are likely to have limited literacy skills or comprehension problems or maybe an intellectual disability. In our project on perinatal health care and services for women with disabilities, we developed a visual tool that showed the main steps of the consultation process from the moment a person is recruited as a potential participant until they do their interview. After initial contact with prospective participants, an email including the visual tool was sent to them and indicated that they were currently at step 1. As you can see on the image on your screen, each step was explained concisely. For example, at step 1, participants were invited to read the participation agreement document, and we also indicated that they could complete it themselves or with us during step 2. They had also to watch the video explaining the document and to write down any questions for our upcoming meeting, which would happen at step 2. Visual aids like this can help prospective participants understand the different phases of the participation process, which can be reassuring for them. It is also useful for ensuring free and informed consent. During the recruitment process at INESSS, we use a participation agreement to inform individuals who wish to participate in project consultations. However, the length of the document and the language complexity can be a challenge for many people from vulnerable groups. Unfortunately, the content of this document cannot be modified as it is subject to ethical obligations. Without a clear understanding of the project, as well as the risks and benefits of participating, prospective participants cannot provide informed consent. Furthermore, in some situations, prospective participants may lack the necessary technological tools to complete the documents. And we notice that a significant proportion of potential participants are frequently lost after these types of forms are sent out by email. This type of situation occurs regularly in our projects, especially those where we seek participants from vulnerable groups. Therefore, developing additional support material to facilitate the reading and understanding of these documents before potential participants are interviewed can be useful. For example, in our project on the experiences of women with disabilities regarding perinatal care and services, we created an explanatory video that prospective participants could watch as they read the participation agreement. This video was meant to facilitate their understanding of the implications of their participation. Several participants told us that watching the video answered some of their questions, thereby making it easier for them to fill out the participation agreement. Today, due to time and language constraints, we will not be showing the video, but instead, here's a screenshot of the PowerPoint presentations used in the video. In the left-hand column, each page of the participation agreement scroll by. For each slide, we highlighted with a colored box the excerpt we wanted to summarize and explain concisely. In the right-hand column, participants could see a summary of the verbal explanations given by one of our team members in the video. The team member also appeared in a bubble like this one at the bottom of the screen, allowing each prospective participant to see her non-verbal communication cues while she talked, which can be helpful for some people with disabilities. Subtitles also appeared at the bottom of the screen to accompany the audio and aid comprehension throughout the viewing experience. At various points during the video, potential participants were invited to pause the presentation as needed to take necessary time to read carefully. They were also encouraged to jot down any questions they had for the second step, the meeting with the team, before signing the document. In short, all of these elements were designed to allow the participant to easily follow the flow of each section of the document as they read. We will now address some of the issues and strategies related to data collection methods. When working with vulnerable groups, some adjustments with regards to the way we go about conducting interviews may be needed. For example, some people with disabilities, such as those with hearing or speech impairments, may face significant challenges in communicating or understanding the question asked. When appropriate, providing sign language interpretation or live subtitles on screen during a virtual interview can be helpful. In some projects, such as those where we sought to interview women with disabilities or IPV victims and perpetrators, the interview questions were sent by email in advance. This allowed participants to prepare and avoid being thrown off balance by personal or sensitive questions. This approach also creates a reassuring interview environment where participants know that there will be no trick questions. This can alleviate any mistrust some participants might have towards us and encourage them to be authentic when sharing their experiences and opinions. We will now address some of the issues related to confidentiality and the sensitive nature of certain topics. It can be difficult for some vulnerable people to talk about their experiences for fear of being judged or misunderstood. It is therefore important to build trust with participants in order to create an environment where they feel comfortable sharing their experiences and perspectives without fear. Some people may fear that their statements will be reported to service providers, even if the participation agreement stipulates that their interview will remain confidential. For example, in our project on IPV, we sought to explore the perspectives of individuals who had participated in IPV perpetrator programs. It is important to know that in Quebec, many men who are charged with IPV are legally required to attend IPV perpetrator programs due to a court order. Throughout the course of their program, staff assess participants' progress, which can influence subsequent actions such as custody rights or potential sentencing, etc. Therefore, to encourage participants to provide us with their honest feedback regarding the service received, we made sure to reiterate at the beginning of the interview that everything that they would share with us would not be reported to the IPV program staff. It's also essential to be able to welcome the other person's experiences and perspectives with empathy and without judgment, even in situations where we feel internally uncomfortable. And that can be a challenge. For example, in our project on child neglect, a mother explained that her son had been sexually abused by a romantic partner. In the interview, she said she was angry that she had to ask her partner to move out, stating that the things he had done to her son weren't that bad. These are difficult things to hear, but we must be able to continue the interview. We want to say that while it is important to welcome the other person's perspective without judgment, we have to be very careful not to make statements that would reinforce false beliefs or encourage inappropriate or violent behavior. For example, by agreeing with the person's inappropriate remarks. It is also important to be humble and to create an environment where vulnerable people feel respected and valued for their lived experience and knowledge. For example, in the opioid overdose project, one of our goals was to understand the challenges faced by regular citizens who had to intervene in an overdose situation once, in order to identify best practices for resuscitation. Rather than asking participants to comment on the best practices found in the literature, which could have been intimidating for some participants, we decided to only ask questions related to the participants' experience without mentioning or comparing it to what we found in the literature before doing the interviews. Precisely, they were first asked to explain how the event unfolded, describing in a very factual manner the steps that they took when intervening to save the overdose victim. Then we would ask follow-up questions based on their experiences to fully understand issues and challenges that they had encountered. And finally, depending on the topic, it can be helpful to consider the interviewer's identity markers in order to create a safe environment for the participants. For example, in the case of IPV, some female victims may feel less comfortable sharing their experiences with a man than with a woman. In that context, it is relevant to ask participants in advance whether they would prefer to be interviewed by a woman or by a man. Depending on the situation, a focus group may be more advantageous, while in other situations, individual interviews may be preferable. When addressing a topic that may elicit difficult emotional reactions, individual interviews may be more suitable as they offer greater privacy and confidentiality. That said, by being with others who have had a similar experience, some participants may feel understood, which can encourage sharing. If the focus group method is chosen, it's important to have strategies in place in case a participant feels like upset or intimidated, and doesn't feel well enough to continue with the group conversation. In the project on rehab services for young people with adjustment problems, we opted for a focus group. We explored with young people living in state-controlled rehab centers their experiences and needs in terms of services. Various themes were addressed, and some of which could reawaken painful memories and create challenging emotions. To ensure that the focus group would function smoothly and to prevent anyone from feeling trapped in an overly difficult group discussion, the scientific coordinator of the project remained outside of the meeting room and was available to chat if needed. When there's a risk that participants could encourage each other in their harmful behaviors or beliefs, individual interviews would be preferable. This is one of the reasons why we chose to conduct individual interviews rather than focus groups with the IPV perpetrator. And the time required to conduct consultations with vulnerable populations is also something, an important factor to consider when planning this stage of the project. Individuals from marginalized groups or in vulnerable situations may need time to open up. We found that it is helpful to begin with simpler, lighter questions to build trust before delving into more emotionally charged issues. The time required to conduct an interview can be affected by the participant's disability. In this regard, certain adjustments may be necessary. In the perinatal care in the context of disability project, each participant was informed at the beginning of the interview that she could request a break at any time for any reason to ensure her comfort and well-being throughout the interview. And as you might expect, if the team agrees that the individual interviews would be more suitable considering the needs and the risk associated with the project, more time must be planned to complete the consultation phase. So this is something to consider. At the INESSS, we offer a free psychological support session for any project participant who would feel the need to discuss with a mental health specialist after participating in our consultations. This is mentioned in the participation agreement that every participant had to sign. Because the topics discussed with vulnerable groups can often evoke difficult emotions or painful memories, we find that it is particularly important to remind them at the end of their interview or focus group that if needed, they can contact the INESSS mental health specialist. The info of that person could be included in a post-interview thank you email or shown on the screen if it's a virtual interview. It can also be useful to provide a list of referrals to services offered within the healthcare system. This is precisely what was done in the perinatal care for women with disability project. In some of our projects, such as the one on intimate partner violence, IPV, and the one on the opioid overdose, it has been particularly important to think ahead about the potential safety issues that could arise during consultations, whether it be the safety of the project team members or the safety of the project participants. And we had to plan risk mitigation strategies. When planning the consultations for the project on IPV, we identified several potential safety risks for us or for the participants. For instance, one of the IPV perpetrators could become aggressive during his interview or harass a team member after his interview. It should be noted that all of our team members were women and all of the IPV perpetrators participating in our projects were men. Therefore, in order to reduce the risks, we decided to always conduct interviews in pairs, as participants may be less tempted to act inappropriately or make offensive remarks toward an interviewer when there is a witness. Furthermore, the project coordinator was always aware of the interview schedule, and she remained available and reachable by phone in case of emergency. The decision to have 2 team members present during the interviews were also made in case the participant suggested they intended to harm someone, such as their spouse, or were suicidal. We established that if we sense in the participant's discourse or behaviors imminent danger to himself or others, one of the team members would turn off their camera and microphone and call the police, while the other one would maintain contact with the participant. Fortunately, this situation never arose, but we were prepared just in case. At first, we considered conducting in-person interviews with IPV perpetrators at the INESSS offices. Since we anticipated that most interviews would take place in the evening to accommodate participants' work schedules, a security guard would have been necessary just in case, as there is usually no one else working in our offices in the evening. Furthermore, we were concerned that a participant might follow one of our team members home after the interview. Therefore, we decided to conduct all interviews with IPV perpetrators online. While the vast majority of participants in that project were respectful during their interviews, one situation proved particularly challenging for team members conducting the interview. Upon connecting to the meeting, that man displayed a hostile attitude towards their team. Despite the team's effort to ease the tension, it was impossible to create a safe environment for everyone. Therefore, the team ended the interview after only 10 minutes. Because the interview was conducted online, we were able to stop the interviews and leave without fearing that the participants would become angry at us and maybe physically attack us, a situation that would have been much more difficult to manage in person. Despite the risks, it is possible to conduct in-person interviews. For example, in the project on opioid overdoses, we conducted in-person interviews with individuals who had themselves experienced an overdose. We met with participants in person directly at a drug addiction center that had agreed to land its premises and ensured that a staff member was present. If a problem arose, for example, if the person experienced cravings or became aggressive, the staff member on site could be called in and help. We also want to talk about the risk of retaliation. In the case of consultations with victims of IPV, several measures were implemented to prevent their spouse or ex-spouse from learning of their participation in our project, as we feared that their abusive partner could retaliate against them. First, the subject lines of all of our emails to victims were always very neutral, such as, "Thank you for your interest," or "Documents to read and sign." The topic of IPV was never mentioned in the email subject line in case the abusive partner could access the participant's mailbox. We offered them different interview options to accommodate their needs. They could do their interview in person or at our offices or in virtual interviews. We also decided not to publish the names of the IPV victims who participated in our projects, nor the name of the perpetrators, even though some individuals might have had agreed to have their names appear in the preliminary pages of the report where we say thank you to everyone who participated in the project. So we made that decision for safety issues. Finally, we also want to bring up the importance of expressing our appreciation to participants, whether through symbolic gestures or compensation. As you know, it is not uncommon for vulnerable groups to face financial hardship, a reality that has been exacerbated by the current economic climate. In this context, offering financial compensation to those who generously take the time to share their experiences with us is an important form of gratitude. Due to the poverty experienced by some of the people we meet, we have had to be flexible and find ways to quickly provide financial compensation. We also realize that the direct deposit is not always the best option for some vulnerable participants. For example, in the IPV project, there were concerns about the risk for IPV victims if their abusive partners noticed that the INESSS had deposited money into their account. In other projects, some participants simply did not have a bank account. In these situations, offering monetary compensation in cash can be a good option. When conducting in-person interviews or focus groups, it is good practice to provide snacks and drinks for participants. This is even more important when consulting vulnerable populations who often live in precarious circumstances. We've noticed that this is greatly appreciated, and it helps establish trust from the very first minute of the meeting. Expressing gratitude throughout the interview and also after the consultations is an important symbolic gesture, particularly in a context where participants often face prejudice, discrimination, or contempt in their daily lives. In our project on perinatal care and services for disabled women, a personalized thank you letter was sent to each participant after the consultation. This is a small gesture that was truly heartwarming for participants. Thank you all for listening. Now we have some time for a Q&A session.